Are you curious about food? Do you wonder about what you eat and why you eat it? Have you ever wanted to travel deep inside ingredients to discover the secrets inside them? Have you ever wondered, what would T-Rex taste like? Or could we make clouds that rain vodka? What did Henry VIII eat for dinner? And how was ice cream invented? Have you ever wanted to crack open the minds of the world's best chefs to discover their secrets? Well, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to Journey to the Centre of Food. On this adventure, two long-time food TV makers, Jay and James, set sail on a journey of food discovery. Each week, we welcome in different food experts, from top chefs to food historians, scientists to archaeologists, all with the purpose of discovering more about our incredible relationship with food. So if you're a perpetually curious foodie, then climb aboard for a journey to the centre of food.
You are listening to The Evidence Locker. Our cases have been researched using open source and archive materials. It deals with true crimes and real people. Some parts are graphic in nature, and listener discretion is advised. Each episode is produced with the utmost respect to the victims, their families, and loved ones. On grainy CCTV footage taken on a rainy December night in Dublin, a man dressed in black can be seen waiting outside the gate of the Bank of Ireland on Leeson Street. He speaks on his cell phone, making no attempt to seek shelter from the pouring rain. Then, a young man who works at the bank walks by, heading to a second gate. Trevor Deely was making his way home from his end-of-year office party and decided to pick up his umbrella from the office before walking home. The footage shows the man following him, and they have a short conversation. Trevor enters the bank, closing the gate behind him. The man remains outside facing the building. Trevor never mentioned the strange man to his coworker, Carl Pender, who was inside working the night shift. So whatever was said between them did not seem to have unsettled the young Trevor. He had a cup of tea with Carl and left, never to be seen again. Somewhere between his work and his apartment, on that walk home, Trevor Deely vanished into thin air. Trevor's case still baffles police, and his family can only hope that someone somewhere knows what happened to Trevor, and that this person can bring closure to their nightmare of 21 years. Trevor Deely was born on the 15th of August, 1978, in Naas, County Kildare, Ireland, to parents Michael and Anne. Trevor was the younger brother of Michelle, Pamela, and Mark. Growing up in Naas, Trevor learned the value of living in a tight-knit community and knew the importance of caring for others. He had a jovial personality, and to know Trevor was to like him. After school, the academically strong Trevor was not 100% sure what he wanted to do with his life. He enrolled to study business at the Waterford Institute of Technology, but dropped out in his second year. Trevor had always been good with numbers and had an instinct for problem solving. It was the late 90s, and the IT industry was booming. So his sister Michelle suggested he took a computer course in Dublin. This course changed his life. Everything fell into place as Trevor realized he had found a career that was perfect for him. With a good qualification in hand, and an amicable personality to suit, it did not take Trevor long to land a job. In fact, starting out he had 3 offers, one from a transport company, one from a computer company, and the third from the Bank of Ireland. Not sure which one to take, Trevor spoke to his dad for guidance. Michael Deely suggested his son took the Bank of Ireland job because he felt it was more secure than the other options. Excited to embark on his new career, Trevor started working as part of the assets management team at the Bank of Ireland on Leeson Street in the Dublin city centre in May 1999. His team was made up of 9 other people, and Trevor fit in from the very first day. His coworkers appreciated his work ethic, his reliability, and enjoyed the energy he brought to the team. If they went out for drinks after work, the 6'2" young man with the reddish hair and big smile was always the life of the party. His manager, Dara Treacy, said this about Trevor. He was the most perfect employee. He was a very happy guy. Trevor was one of the happiest guys you could ever meet. He had this big happy smile on his face. He loved dealing with people. Trevor worked in the high-paced environment of financial services and investment banking and fit right in. He got along with everyone, his co-workers as well as clients. A part of the job was to work night shift on occasion, seeing to backups and updates. Trevor and the rest of the guys from the IT department didn't mind it and supported each other whenever needed. By all accounts, Trevor was serious about his job, and even though he loved socializing and drinking with friends, he'd never be so inebriated that he could not perform at work the next day. He knew when to stop and diligently showed up on time the next morning, no matter what. Trevor shared a 3-bedroom flat with 2 female roommates, and it was a conflict-free situation. Trevor knew one of the girls from NACE, and they got on well together, and in December 2000, they had all lived in the apartment in Balls Bridge for over a year. Trevor often walked to and from work if the weather allowed. He knew the area between his home and work very well, navigating his way through shortcuts. So at the age of 22, Trevor had a great job, lived in a nice apartment, had many friends, and a loving family. Life was good, and he enjoyed every minute of it. In the summer of 2000, Trevor and some friends from NACE visited another friend in Belfast, who was studying at the Queen's University at the time. In Belfast, Trevor met a couple of girls from Alaska. They were students at the University of Anchorage, who were vacationing in Ireland, and Trevor was intrigued. None of his close friends or family ever met the girls, but in the months that followed, it became clear that Trevor perhaps had a bit of a crush on one of them. He was keen to go to Alaska, but whether he was chasing after a girl or if he was merely up for a travel adventure, Trevor never disclosed his real intentions to anyone. His friend Glenn Cullen worked for Aer Lingus Airlines and was able to arrange a cheap ticket for Trevor with his friends and family benefit. So towards the end of November 2000, Trevor boarded a plane for Anchorage. And that was the last time Glenn saw his friend, as Trevor passed through customs and onwards to Alaska. When he was in Alaska, he called home frequently and told his mom that he was going to see the melting glaciers, about 50 miles from Anchorage. This awesome encounter with nature had a big impact on Trevor, and he mentioned the trip to the glaciers to several people. Trevor returned home on the morning of Tuesday, December 5th, 2000, and went straight to his parents' home in NACE. He briefly told his mom and dad that he had a great time and that Alaska's natural beauty was amazing to see. And his mother prepared a steak dinner while Trevor tried to talk to his dad. Michael was in a hurry and assured Trevor that he would love to hear all about the trip when they got together for Christmas. Sadly, Michael would never be able to have this conversation with his youngest child, a fact that torments him to this very day. On Wednesday, December 6th, Trevor was back at work. There was somewhat of a festive atmosphere as the year was drawing to an end. The office Christmas party was planned for the following night, and everyone was looking forward to it. On Thursday afternoon, Trevor went to his dad's offices, not far from his own work on Leeson Street. His brother Mark, an optician in Castlebar, had sent Trevor's prescription contact lenses to their home address in Naas, and their father brought it to Dublin for Trevor. Michael Deely was not in the office when Trevor dropped by, so he called him on his way home. When he called, Trevor was at Copperface Jack's, having pre-party drinks with a group of his work friends. He was in good spirits and looking forward to the office party later that night. During this phone call, Trevor mentioned to his dad that the power was out at his apartment, but that he had called the ESB and it had been fixed. This means Trevor must have gone home after work before going to Copperface Jack's. From Copperface Jack's, Trevor and his colleagues walked through the wet city with seasonal decorations in store windows and Christmas lights in the streets. Many people like them were mulling about, out for a night on the town. The Bank of Ireland office party was held at the Hilton Hotel on Charlemont Place. The night was a treat with top-class food, a live band, and dancing. Everyone had fun at the party, and things ran smoothly. After midnight, most partygoers had gone home. Trevor and some of his coworkers were not ready to call it a night, and moved the party to a nearby pub. From there, they proceeded to Buck Whaley's nightclub on Lower Leeson Street. It was not the best night for pub crawling, as it was raining heavily. Also, there was a taxi strike, which gave the evening a somewhat disorganized vibe. Many people were out on the streets, walking home in the rain. People who usually took taxis opted to drive, perhaps too intoxicated to drive, but they did it anyway. Trevor stayed with his workmates at Buck Whaley's until approximately 3:25 a.m., Friday morning, December 8th. Although it was late, everyone who was with Trevor agreed that he had not been drinking heavily. He knew he was due at work the next day and was careful not to overdo it. When Trevor left, he remembered he would not be able to take a cab home, and he would have had to walk 30 minutes to his apartment on Serpentine Avenue. His office was around the corner from a nightclub, so Trevor decided to drop by to collect an umbrella. There were always promotional umbrellas around the office, for staff to use should they need it. His work friend Carl Pender was working the night shift for the IT department when a soaking wet Trevor arrived. He told Carl about the Christmas party and asked if he had time for a cup of tea. Carl was in the middle of a task and asked Trevor to give him a couple of minutes. Trevor did not seem to be in a hurry and went to his desk where he checked his emails and sent himself an email with a to-do list for the following day. When Carl was done, they had a cup of tea together, and Trevor chatted about the office party. They had a light-hearted conversation, and after finishing his tea, Trevor left. Carl did not get the sense that Trevor was drunk. Perhaps he had a bit of a buzz, sure, but he was definitely not inebriated. When the 22-year-old left, he did not seem scared or apprehensive. He was simply heading home after a long night, hoping to catch some sleep before work the next day. By 10:30 that morning, however, Trevor had not shown up at work. His manager, Dara Tracy, didn't initially think very much of it, seeing it was the Christmas party the night before. Trevor had also recently returned from an overseas trip, so Dara decided to cut the young man some slack, assuming he was suffering from a hangover or jet lag or both. Trevor was a diligent worker who always showed up, so if he needed to take a day, Dara wasn't going to give him a hard time about it. Some of Trevor's colleagues tried calling him during the day, and his cell phone just rang. His sister Michelle had emailed Trevor on Friday, asking if he had fun at his office party. She was in London and had her own office party that same night. He never replied though, but she knew he was busy, so she didn't give it a second thought. She also tried calling, but he didn't pick up for her either. The next day, Michelle was out Christmas shopping in London. She called Trevor once more to get some advice regarding a present for their parents. Like the previous day, his phone rang, and he did not pick up. Michelle didn't think much of it at the time and did not realize that there was any cause for concern. But on Monday, the 11th of December, Trevor failed to show up for work again. Having spoken with Trevor's colleagues, his manager, Dara Tracy, established that no one had had any contact with Trevor since he left the bank in the early morning hours of Friday, December 8th. This was completely out of character for young Trevor, so Dara informed the Bank of Ireland's Human Resources Department and voiced his concerns. By this time, co-workers who had not been able to get a hold of him over the weekend were deeply concerned. Dara called Trevor's parents in Naas and asked if he perhaps went home for the weekend. Anne said her son wasn't in Naas, and Dara had the heavy task of informing her that her son was unaccounted for. Panic set in immediately as Anne Deely called her husband Michael, who was at work in Dublin, to inform him about their son's absence from work. Michael immediately went to Trevor's apartment in Ballsbridge, but no one was there. Both of Trevor's roommates were out of town, so they could not assist him either. Michael tried calling Trevor's cell phone repeatedly, but it just went straight to the voicemail. As soon as they found out that Trevor was missing, his siblings and friends joined together to help find him. They pieced together when last anyone had spoken to Trevor and what he was planning on doing that weekend. Conflicting accounts exist as to whether Trevor had decided to spend the weekend of December 9th at the family home in Naas or stay in Dublin. He told his mom he would stay in the city and do some Christmas shopping, but he had arranged to meet his friends, Glenn and Conleth, in Fletcher's Bar, Naas, that same weekend. His friend Glenn had spoken to Trevor on the phone and said, "Don't tell me how you got on in Alaska. I'll meet up with you next weekend. I'll be off then and we'll hook up. We'll have a good old chat and a chinwag then, and you can tell me all about Alaska." Glenn would never have that chinwag with his friend, as events were soon to unfold that would echo through the years. Trevor's family communicated with his friends and his colleagues, and soon they discovered that no one had seen or spoken to Trevor since the night of the Christmas party. Carl Pender told them about Trevor's brief visit to the office and said that he left at 4 a.m. on Friday morning. Carl explained that Trevor had gone to the office to pick up his umbrella seeing as he had a long walk home in the rain. Trevor's parents informed the police, and an investigation commenced straight away. They had already lost valuable time and quickly assessed the situation. Trevor Deely was an upstanding member of the community who was well liked. He had many friends and was close to all the members of his family. He had never been in trouble with the law and was not known to ever have been involved in any illegal activity. The Deely family and all of Trevor's friends were very proactive in carrying out their own investigation and in assisting police. They took it upon themselves to walk the streets of Dublin, knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen anything. Within hours of learning about his disappearance, they had flyers ready to be distributed. The Bank of Ireland, as well as colleagues from Michael Deely's work, assisted in any way they could. Employees participated in searches. They provided additional posters and flyers. Taxis all around Dublin displayed Trevor's missing poster. People involved in the search wore t-shirts with Trevor's information to sporting events like rugby and soccer games, raising awareness as far and wide as possible. The family put up hundreds of posters and handed out thousands of leaflets. They talked to business owners, pub staff, retail workers. They also spoke to the homeless, planned out all of Trevor's possible routes home, and walked them themselves. They did this day after day and night after night. Trevor's brother Mark spoke to a guard at the U.S. Embassy on the junction of Clyde and Pembroke Roads. The guard told him that because of the then U.S. President Bill Clinton's visit to Dublin on Tuesday the 12th of December, there had been a sweep of the entire area during the weekend after Trevor's disappearance. The optimist would say, perhaps they found something that would have helped to find Trevor, but in reality, they cleared away everything, possibly destroying vital evidence without realizing its significance. Meanwhile, having lost 4 days in an investigation, the guards searched the canals and rivers, fine-combed the streets, investigated the parks, and followed up any and all perceivable leads and tips. But in the end, there was still no trace of Trevor. One of Trevor's best friends, Conleth Lunan, who worked for a communications company that supplied CCTV equipment, used his know-how to obtain all possible CCTV evidence from street cameras, as well as security cameras at the bank. Because some CCTV systems were set to record over old footage within 48 hours, he was lucky to have requested the footage in the nick of time. Of course, it was only released to police, but the guards handed it to Conleth, who compiled a chronological video, an eerie visual account of Trevor's last known movements. The footage revealed that for some time prior to Trevor's arrival at the bank, an unknown male had been standing outside Gate 1 on Leeson Street. He can be seen at 3:05 a.m., and Trevor arrives half an hour later at 3:34 a.m. Remember, it was a cold and rainy night, so why would this man stand out in the pouring rain for more than half an hour? When Trevor walks past the man, he does not seem to notice him, as he's on his cell phone, talking to Carl Pender inside, working the night shift. Curiously, the man follows Trevor to the second gate. They have a short exchange while Trevor opens the gate and goes inside. The man stays behind, and Trevor enters the building. The conversation seems insignificant. Perhaps the man asked for the time or a cigarette. Either way, Trevor does not seem to be alarmed by the encounter whatsoever. The gate was usually locked and chained. The security guard Peter had taken the chain off shortly before Trevor's arrival because there had been an internal delivery. Trevor only had to unlock the gate, letting himself in. When he passed Peter inside, he thanked him for letting him in. At 3:37 a.m., with Carl and Trevor both inside and unaware of any outside movement, another 2 men arrived and were standing outside the gate. CCTV footage shows the 3 men standing, facing the bank offices, staring in at the building. Although it looks slightly ominous, the male to the left and the one beside him were traced by police and established to have been 2 members of staff. It's a little odd, but perhaps they had the same idea as Trevor to collect an umbrella before heading home, and on finding they could not get in, decided to leave. Their exact purpose for being there and their identities have not been disclosed to the general public, but the unknown male in the right of the frame remain. Inside the bank, Trevor had a conversation with Carl about the night out, checked his email, and then had a cup of tea in the canteen, together with Carl. He bid his friend a good night and left. The CCTV camera picks Trevor up again at the same gate he entered at 4:02 a.m., carrying a large promotional umbrella. On exiting the gate, Trevor wraps his coat around himself more tightly, takes a brief look to his right, puts up the umbrella, and exits the frame to the left. At 4:06 a.m. as he walked, Trevor made a phone call to his friend Glenn. They had been struggling to get through to each other all night, as it was too noisy on Trevor's end when Glenn called. However, Glenn had left his phone on charge in his kitchen and did not know Trevor had called until he listened to a message later that morning. The message was brief, letting his friend know he would speak to him soon. Glenn had no reason to suspect that Trevor had gone missing, so not realizing the significance of the message, deleted it. This was the last contact Trevor ever made with any of his friends or family. He is seen for the last time on CCTV cameras on Friday morning, December 8th at 4:14 a.m., captured from an ATM at the AIB premises on the corner of Baggot Street Bridge and Haddington Road. Trevor, with his distinctive gait, was positively identified in the video by his parents, Michael and Ann Deely. 29 seconds behind Trevor, a man in dark clothing follows. Another 29 seconds later, a girl can be seen walking along, followed by a couple walking side by side under an umbrella. Another 35 seconds later. The couple called police when they identified themselves. They told the guards that it was a tough walk home that night, and the weather was so bad they had to cling onto their umbrella to prevent it from blowing away. The man was very drunk, but not the woman, and she said she never saw Trevor walking up ahead of them. She also did not notice anything strange or untoward along Haddington Road that night. Trevor was 90 seconds in front of them. If he had had an altercation with the unidentified man 30 seconds behind him, the couple would most certainly have walked past them. But the woman was adamant that she never saw anything that raised concern. Because of the taxi strike that night, more people were walking home than on a typical night. The taxi strike was very significant to the investigation. Firstly, had there not been a strike, Trevor would most likely have taken a taxi home, and for all we know, not have disappeared. The strike also meant that police had fewer witnesses, seeing as taxi drivers are always a good starting point when interviewing people. They are sober, vigilant, and know the streets well. People walking home from pubs and nightclubs at 4:15 a.m. on a cold and rainy night were not necessarily the most reliable witnesses. What was curious is the fact that Trevor did not take the shortest route home. One would imagine that after 4 a.m. on a cold and rainy night he'd have wanted to get home as soon as he could. Yet he carried on along Haddington Road. There was a 24-hour Spar convenience store along that road. Maybe he was heading that way. To buy something to eat or drink, perhaps? It would have taken Trevor 10 minutes longer to get home, which in the pouring rain is not something to be ignored. Of course, the explanation could be simple. Haddington Road is a well-lit through road. Perhaps Trevor was trying to be cautious. Perhaps it offered better shelter on a rainy night. We'll never know why Trevor chose this route that night. The guards had to consider various options in theorizing about Trevor's fate. Firstly, could there have been an accident? Did he slip and fall into a canal? However, it is believed that Trevor was headed for his apartment on Serpentine Avenue, so he would have been heading away from the Grand Canal. The only other body of water he could have fallen into next would have been the River Dodder, as he crossed over onto Marion Road. But looking at the footage, this does not seem likely. Trevor can be seen walking briskly and even sidesteps a puddle of water. He was in full control of his movements. Also, had he fallen into the water, he would have lost his umbrella, but it has never been found. During the first stages of the investigation, the Garda Aqua team searched the canals and rivers in Dublin City extensively without any results. Tosh Lavery, now retired, said in an interview with Donald McIntyre that conditions were good when they searched. They knew each nook and cranny of Dublin's canals, and if Trevor had fallen in, they would have located him for sure. But they didn't find Trevor or any of his belongings. When he disappeared, he would have had his cell phone, wallet, and keys with him. But nothing has ever turned up. Because both of Trevor's roommates were away at the time of his disappearance, investigators could not confirm whether Trevor returned from his night out or not. If he did, maybe he met with foul play once he was there. By searching his room, it did not appear so. It would take Trevor approximately 10 minutes, possibly 15 if he was a slow walker, to reach his apartment from his last known sighting. Somewhere between Pembroke and Marion Road, heading to Serpentine Avenue, he vanished. The million-dollar question that has haunted everyone involved in the investigation was whether the man following shortly behind Trevor was the same man who was loitering outside the bank. Like the man seen at Trevor's work, this man is also wearing dark, baggy pants. But to be fair, most of the people caught on the CCTV footage at the bank, as well as along the way home, were wearing dark clothing. Frustratingly, the quality is not the best, and it is difficult to discern other identifying features like eyeglasses or a beard. Much has been made of this man over the years, with many people believing he holds the key to Trevor's disappearance. It is possible that this unknown man in black from the CCTV footage was seeking entry to the bank, and that Trevor was in the wrong place at the wrong time. When Trevor left the bank, did the man follow him, hoping to relieve him of his access card? When he got close enough to take it off of Trevor, perhaps a struggle ensued, which ended in Trevor's death. The fact that Trevor checked his email when he arrived at the office while waiting for Carl was also scrutinized. Did he communicate anything significant? Or was he expecting a message? Remember, in 2000, it was not possible to receive one's emails on your cell phone. Most people only had access to the internet at work, or they visited internet cafes. Trevor had just returned from what he called the trip of a lifetime. He probably shared his email address with new acquaintances and was looking forward to hearing from them. And seeing as he was waiting for Carl, the obvious thing to do was to go over to his desk and check his emails. Scouring his inbox, sent items, and trash, investigators found nothing of significance that could explain his sudden disappearance. Trevor's family informed the police about his impulsive trip to Alaska shortly before his disappearance. They wondered if that had anything to do with him coming up missing. His sisters went through his personal emails, reading all of the correspondence Trevor had with the girls from Alaska, Kate and Janie. It would seem he was somewhat keen on one of them. Whether it was Kate or Janie is unclear. In an email, it was obvious that Janie tried to discourage Trevor from visiting her in Alaska. She was adamant that she was studying for exams and had classes to attend. But this did not seem to deter Trevor. He insisted, saying he would not be able to take leave from his job at a later time. He said, "Oh, Janie, I'm only free now, and we'll be very busy in the office, and I don't know when I'll get to get away again." Because Trevor did not confide in anyone regarding his feelings, it is impossible to say if he went to Alaska, hoping to see if the relationship had any potential, or if the trip was only an opportunity to travel somewhere far away. Whatever occurred when Trevor arrived, it has been established by both the guards and the sisters, Michelle and Pamela, who even traveled to Alaska to speak to Janie, that no ill intent was at hand, and that nothing suspicious happened. Trevor had thoroughly enjoyed the sights and views in Alaska, and by all accounts, Alaska was in a way just a holiday, a quick break from the normal, and nothing that cast a light on Trevor's disappearance. He was a 22-year-old who was given a dirt cheap ticket and knew some people on the other side of the world. There was nothing more than that. At a press conference in 2016, Trevor's sister Michelle said, "As a family, we have never believed that people can disappear into thin air. We know someone knows something, and we ask that you come forward to put an end to this relentless nightmare. Many people over the past 16 years have questioned why we continue to search for Trevor. The answer is simple if you knew Trevor. We could sum it up by saying that if the situation were reversed, he would never give up on us." With a lack of answers, theories about Trevor's disappearance ranged from probable to plainly absurd. One outwardly suggestion was that Trevor had encountered aliens while he was in Alaska, and that they followed him home, biding their time before abducting him. Needless to say, investigators did not follow up on this story. With any unexplained disappearance, one has to consider the possibility of suicide. However, in Trevor's case, it seemed very unlikely. He had never shown any signs of anxiety or depression, had many positive elements in his life. During his brief time in the office after the party, he also left himself some reminders of things to do when he came back into the office in the morning. If he had planned on taking his own life, would he not have spent that time to write a suicide letter? Because of Trevor having so many positive aspects in his life, investigators also concluded that he did not leave of his own volition. He loved his life, he had a great job, nice place to live, and had strong connections to Dublin, as well as in his hometown of Naas. The theory that was seriously considered for a while was the possibility that Trevor was the victim of a hit-and-run accident. Did a drunk driver run him over, then take his body elsewhere to dispose of it in an attempt to conceal the crime? This too would appear to be unlikely. Firstly, there were many people out on the streets. Someone would have seen or heard something. Also, let's say a car hit and killed Trevor. Would the person have been able to move his body into the car to take him away and dispose of him? Trevor was 6'3", and that would have not been an easy task. Another theory emerged, speculating that Trevor came into contact with criminals wanting to get into the bank's systems. These criminals would have wanted to use Trevor's position to transfer funds or to tamper with statements. But Trevor, although talented and skilled, did not have clearance when it came to accessing accounts and moving large amounts of money. Of course, criminals could have been none the wiser and would have wanted him to do something, and he refused, costing him his life. Similar to this theory was the story that perhaps someone working at the Bank of Ireland wanted to conceal something and needed Trevor's help. Trevor would not get into shady business and was killed to silence him. Like some of the other theories, one cannot dismiss the possibility, but again, this does not seem like the answer to the question of what happened to Trevor. Trevor's disappearance was also linked to the unsolved murder of 21-year-old Sinead Kelly, who was stabbed to death at a canal in June 1998. But Sinead was a sex worker and drug addict. Word on the street was that she was killed by a drug dealer to whom she owed a large amount of money. Trevor Deely was not known to have ever used drugs or even crossed paths with a drug dealer. However, the most recent lead in Trevor's case, which came to light in August of 2017, pointed to a Crumlin-based criminal. The gang he belonged to was involved in the drugs and prostitution trade in the area where Trevor disappeared from. The very same gang was investigated for the murder of Sinead Kelly. An informant alleged that Trevor was murdered on the night of his disappearance by this gangster, and that Trevor and his alleged murderer had not known each other before that night. It was a chance encounter. With this information in hand, police searched a 3-acre secluded area in the Dublin suburb of Chapelizard, about 8 kilometers from where Trevor was last seen. Although a gun and drugs were found during the search, investigators concluded that they were not related to the case, calling the site a stash area for criminals. The search was called off in September, and police said at the time that they had not found anything that would assist them in Trevor's case. Police searches have been extensive over the years, following every tip they can, checking parks and wasteland, yet still no answers have surfaced. Trevor's family is still looking and searching for that vital piece of information that will bring him home. When Trevor disappeared, he had short red-brown hair, a fair complexion, and stood over 6 feet tall. He was wearing a mustard and brown checked shirt, beige-gray corduroy flared trousers, dark deck shoes with white stripes, a green padded jacket, and was carrying a large, dark blue umbrella with white ACC bank lettering. If anyone anywhere has information that could help bring them closure, please contact Pearse Street Garda Station or Crimestoppers. This information is also in the show notes. It is safe to say that Trevor did not disappear of his own accord. He loved his family and would never have put them through such pain for so many years. He was happy in his job and had many friends. In this case, where anything is possible, one can only hope that a resolution will come, so his family can finally know what happened to Trevor on that fateful, cold and rainy December night. If you'd like to read more about this case, have a look at the resources used for this episode in the show notes. Visit us on social media to see more about today's case. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our channel on YouTube. If you like what we do here at Evidence Locker, subscribe on Apple Podcast or wherever you are listening right now, and kindly leave a 5-star review. This was the Evidence Locker. Thank you for listening.